We begin with breaking news out of North Idaho.
Just a moment ago, Moscow police confirmed 4 people were found dead in a home.
Xana, Kernodle.
Xana, you will not be forgotten. You have impacted so many lives and have given people so much love. I hope I can make you proud and try to leave an impact on this world and on people like you did.
Ethan, Chapin.
We are eternally grateful that we spent so much time with him, because time is precious and it's something you can't get back.
Madison Mogen.
So just smart and funny and beautiful. She was just nice to everybody.
Kaylee Goncalves. They shared everything. They came here together. They eventually get into the same apartment together. And in the end, they died together.
The Idaho murders rocked the small town of Moscow, captured the national attention. We'd soon learn that 4 college students were stabbed to death, murdered weeks before Thanksgiving. It would take police thousands of tips, hundreds of interviews before arresting Bryan Kohberger, the suspected killer. Let's go back to November of 2022, when this all started.
First, my deepest condolences to the families. And friends of Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, and Madison. Excuse me. Their loss has been devastating, and they were bright lights in our community.
The 4 victims were found dead around noon on Sunday, November 13th, 2022, in a house just off the University of Idaho's campus, after another roommate called police.
The results of autopsies indicated that the 4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds, and there was no sign of sexual assault.
Police say all 4 had been out until about 2 that morning before returning home. Documents show Xana Kernodle was awake around 4 a.m. She was on TikTok and ordered food through the app DoorDash. One of the surviving roommates told officers she woke up and heard what she thought was crying from Kernodle's room about 4:17 in the morning. A security camera about 50 feet from the wall of Kernodle's bedroom picked up distorted audio of what sounded like a whimper, followed by a loud thud and a dog barking. The roommate says she opened her door and saw a man in black clothing and a mask. Court documents say that man walked by her and out of a back sliding glass door. The roommate then locked herself in her room.
At this crime scene, we collected 103 pieces of individual evidence. We took approximately 4,000 photographs. We've conducted multiple 3D scans of the residence, and we have hundreds of hours used by technicians and investigators.
Outside the house, police say the suspect's alleged movements played a big role in connecting him to the crime scene. Using cell phone records and security camera video, investigators determined Kohberger's car and cell phone left the Washington State University campus, where Kohberger lives, at 2:44 a.m. on the night of the murders, headed for Moscow. Investigators say at 2:47 a.m., Kohberger's phone was either turned off or put in airplane mode. It didn't come back on until 4:48 that morning. A white sedan matching Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra was spotted in the area of the murder scene from 3:29 a.m. until 4:20 a.m. Court documents show the vehicle drove by the house 3 times, about 3:30 in the morning, before leaving the road. Then at 4:04, the car returned to the street and parked. Then it left the street at a high rate of speed at about 4:20 in the morning. The suspect's car was spotted back on the Washington State campus at 5:25 a.m. However, that wasn't the first time that Kohberger's car was near the victim's house. Was Kohberger stalking the victims? That's a question investigators sought to answer when they obtained a search warrant for records from Kohberger's cell phone. Court records say on at least 12 occasions prior to the murders, including one time back in August, Kohberger's phone was detected near the murder scene in late evening and early morning hours. 2 weeks into the murder investigation, a break in the case. On November 25th, police asked the public to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. On November 29th, a WSU police officer looked up Elantras registered at the school. One of those was Kohberger's. Investigators tracked him from Washington State to Pennsylvania in mid-December in that same car.
Hello, how you doing? How y'all doing today? I will say that we have found an Elantra.
But it was DNA evidence that solidified Kohberger as investigators' prime suspect. The 18-page affidavit says the Idaho State Lab found a single source of male DNA labeled suspect profile on the button snap of a knife sheath left at the crime scene.
The reason DNA is so compelling is because it is a unique signature. Unless you have an identical twin, no one has your exact DNA.
Cece Moore is the chief genealogist with Parabon. She pioneered the genetic technology used in solving cases like the Golden State Killer. The techniques can crack a case with a tiny sample of DNA.
Based on the affidavit in this case, it looks like touch DNA is likely what they had to work with. That's just skin cells.
Kohberger's affidavit shows that on December 27th, Pennsylvania agents took trash from his parents' home in Albrightsville.
The Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, has ruled that when we throw something away, we are abandoning that. So we are abandoning our DNA everywhere we go. And it has been ruled, at least so far, that that's fair game for law enforcement.
That trash was sent to the Idaho State Lab, and within a day, the lab had another profile.
It certainly appears that they retrieved his father's DNA from the trash.
Investigators reporting more than 99.9% of the male population is not expected to be the suspect's biological father.
Those are the ones that we hear in court. Those are the ones we hear law enforcement using as evidence, that there's a 1 in huge number chance that anybody else could be that DNA contributor or be the parent of that DNA contributor.
3 days after the investigators went through the trash, Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home on December 30th. Early on, police learned Kohberger had an above-average understanding of police investigative tactics. According to court records, Kohberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology, cloud-based forensics.
He was definitely well-mannered, very intelligent.
He received his associate's degree in psychology at Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania in 2018. He then went on to DeSales University, also in Pennsylvania, for his bachelor's degree, then his master's in criminal justice. He studied under renowned criminal psychologist Catherine Ramsland, whose books include The Mind of a Murderer and How to Catch a Killer.
He was definitely selectively quiet. I think once you got him going on something that he was interested in, it was very clear that that was where he would take the initiative and say, hey, here's how much I know about this thing.
In May, just before he graduated, authorities confirmed he posted this Reddit survey asking participants to, quote, provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. He asked questions like, how did you leave the scene? How did you accomplish your goal? And how did you approach the victim? Investigators also now know Kohberger applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. Kohberger wrote in his essay he had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. During his time at Washington State University, Kohberger was listed as the teaching assistant for 3 undergrad classes in the Criminal Justice Department. He completed 1 semester in WSU's PhD program before he was arrested.
You never expect someone to do that, and I think it would be, not truthful to say like, oh yeah, I definitely saw it coming, but like really thinking about it, like it's not that surprising.
Kohberger was extradited to Idaho January 4th. He remains behind bars without bail.
A criminal complaint was filed yesterday here in Latah County, charging the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to felony burglary.
The next step in the legal process is a preliminary hearing, where prosecutors present evidence and witnesses in an open court. The judge will also decide whether to send the case to district court. That hearing is set for the week of June 26th. Kohberger will then have an arraignment hearing, where he will enter a plea of guilty or not guilty.
If the prosecutors and the defendants want to, they can engage in plea negotiations. Otherwise, both sides will begin to prepare their case for trial. Unclear how quickly a trial could occur.
So how strong is the case against Kohberger?
What the police have done here is generated a host of circumstantial pieces of evidence. So, we have a car here, we have a sheath here, we have a surveillance footage at this time, and we have this. And together, that overall circle paints a picture of we can put this person here at this particular time when these happen.
What we don't know yet is if Moscow police have found the murder weapon, likely a knife similar to this one, or if they've confirmed a motive. But University of Idaho Assistant Professor of Law Sam Newton says it's safe to assume they're still gathering evidence, meaning new tips are still helpful.
They think they have enough to sustain at least an arrest and moving forward there. They may not feel like they have enough to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And so releasing the name of a suspect to the public allows the police to get more information to solidify their case.
Newton says the defense may consider options like asking to move the case to another jurisdiction and will comb through the other tips collected. If Kohberger were to be convicted, sentencing could range up to the death penalty.
The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Lethal injection is permitted in some cases in the state of Idaho and Latah County. Prosecutor Bill Thompson will ultimately make the determination of whether or not the death penalty is pursued here. But he's not talking.
We are limited on what we are allowed by the courts to say outside of the courtroom.
The court's gag order means investigators can't release information until the facts are exposed in court or in public documents.
There appear to be indications that the magistrate judge does have some concerns about information that could be released to the public and therefore prevent us from finding an unbiased jury for this case.
Experts have pointed to holes in the case. Still, the prosecuting attorney is expressing optimism.
This is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning.
We're in eastern Pennsylvania. Bryan Kohberger spent his teenage years and most of his adult life here. That includes stints at 2 local colleges, including DeSales. Now police and prosecutors in this area want to know what he was up to all those years and are digging into their cold case files. Just outside the open wilderness and resort towns of the Pocono Mountains lies a neighborhood called the Birches.
It's just a very quiet community.
These are the streets an accused killer once roamed as a teenager.
I've definitely seen it on TV. Who hasn't?
Now, Lynn Klein and others in the Pennsylvania communities where Bryan Kohberger lived until last year want to know if he could have committed any crimes before he was charged with the murders at the University of Idaho.
Because anybody or any family that's been harmed or done wrong to deserves to know the truth.
It isn't just citizens. Police and prosecutors have asked the same question.
Your natural reaction is to start wondering, okay, is this guy wanted? Is his name out there? Did he do anything here in Northampton County? Terry Houck.
Terrence Houck is district attorney of Northampton County and leads an office of more than 20 prosecutors and a half dozen detectives. It's here at Northampton Community College where Bryan Kohberger took his first courses in higher education, graduating here in 2018. After Kohberger's arrest for the Idaho murders, Northampton County's district attorney ordered a review of unsolved cases in his county.
We have a crime information center that compiles information of people's description, size, weight, height, method of operation, things of that nature.
Obviously, you wonder whether or not there was any criminality that he committed here in Lehigh County or in the environs.
Jim Martin, district attorney of the neighboring county, Lehigh, also ordered a review of unsolved cases. Lehigh County is home to DeSales University, which Kohberger attended after Northampton Community College. He spent 4 years here studying criminal justice.
Bryan Kohberger.
Earning a master's degree last summer. What does law enforcement do given that he did spend time here?
Well, we have a resource here called the Regional Intelligence and Investigation Center. It's the first thing I did was I asked the director of the RIC, as we call it, to see if we had any contact with Mr. Kohberger.
A data search of more than 6 million police incident reports in Pennsylvania turned up only one record with Kohberger's name. He called police from this bike trail one night to report that his car was locked behind a park gate.
There was a response from him thanking the police and apologizing for the inconvenience.
The district attorney in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, where Kohberger grew up and where a SWAT team arrested him on December 30th, did not respond to our questions. But in Northampton and Lehigh counties, both district attorneys say their investigations have found no links to Kohberger and any unsolved cases.
So we have no unsolved homicides that in any way meet the modus operandi of this event out in Idaho.
There was nothing been brought to my attention. In fact, nothing with respect to Kohberger has come about in our investigations of cold cases or unsolved cases to this point.
And that should be some relief to a community that's been stunned and saddened by the murders of 4 college students 2,500 miles away.
It's a little close to home. You just don't expect it.
In December, people here were hit by a fact as cold and hard as steel, the once towering industry that fueled this part of Pennsylvania. One of their own was charged in a mass murder 2,500 miles away.
So I looked it up, I typed, Idaho Murders, and then, holy crap, that's Bryan. That's Bryan, I know Bryan, That's wild to me. It's a shock, seeing someone you've known on TV.
Jack Bayless met Bryan Kohberger in 8th grade when the two of them ran with a group of boys in this neighborhood near Albrightsville, Pennsylvania.
I want to say he wanted to be a cop since he was younger.
What kind of teenager was he?
He was pretty normal. He was definitely heavier set, and that caused issues in school, apparently.
But in high school, dramatic changes washed over Kohberger, according to several friends, including Bayless.
I believe it was the weight loss first. And I was, I want to say 14 to maybe 16, in between there was the big weight loss. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then it was the drugs.
How did he get started in drugs?
He got in drugs via an acquaintance of his. It was definitely heroin. It was pretty gnarly.
Bayless doesn't know exactly when Kohberger got clean.
Last I saw him, he was pretty lucid.
But the two reconnected after Kohberger enrolled at DeSales University in Center Valley, right around the corner from Bayless's home. Kohberger's major, criminology.
He's always been kind of fascinated with kind of how the brain works and how people think and why they do what they do.
And so my senior year, I ended up in a biology class, which is where I met and interacted with Bryan Kohberger.
What were your first impressions of the guy?
Bryan seemed normal enough.
But that opinion did not last for Bernard James, a DeSales film student in 2018 when he attended a class with Kohberger.
One of the big parts of that biology class that we were in, we had a group project as a part of our final grade.
With 4 DeSales classmates on the project, Kohberger was chosen as team leader. Not surprising for the student DeSales professor Michelle Bolger called brilliant and one of the best students ever, according to an article in the Daily Mail. Dr. Bolger declined to comment to King 5. But to some classmates at the Christian University, Kohberger seemed more like a know-it-all.
The way that he came across in his speech, kind of person who has to use big words, the one always raising his hand in class.
And what happened then towards the end of this whole thing?
We're approaching the due date, and I was feeling like I was left out to dry.
Bernard James says Kohberger completed the class project without including him, resulting in a failed class in Bernard's final year at DeSales. He confronted Kohberger in the university library.
I remember him being very straight-faced, very almost emotionless with this. He kind of a small smile on his face. There's more to him than it seems. Very intense stare. I remember that. I'll never forget that. Looking right into my soul almost, you know, as we were having this back and forth. Yeah, manipulative, cold.
Was he witnessing an odd personality trait or something more? After Kohberger's arrest, Bernard can't be sure.
I mean, it's not every day you expect to come into contact with someone who's accused of something like that, you know, but I see it in some ways, you know. I see the calculated side of him.
We're talking about 4 vicious stabbings here.
Yeah.
Could your friend have done this?
I hope he didn't do it. You know, I'm a big believer in innocent until proven guilty. So I hope someone I know didn't do that, you know.
Here in Pennsylvania, we've been unable to reach anyone from Kohberger's family. A public defender here who represented him during extradition proceedings has said that Kohberger looks forward to being exonerated in Idaho.
You just couldn't ask for better kids.
Dave Hayton considered Ethan Chapin family, all the Chapin kids actually. He and his wife watched them grow up in their Conway neighborhood and treated them like grandchildren. They'd come over for fudge sickles from the basement freezer. When the couple heard what had happened, they were crushed.
And she's crying. And she says, Ethan's been murdered. And I just couldn't, you just can't get your head around it.
Ethan was a triplet. They attended the Conway School before moving on to Mount Vernon High, where Ethan played on the basketball team and graduated in 2019. The siblings were close. They even went to college together. Ethan and his brother were members of the same fraternity.
We have these other 2 kids that are very impacted by this, and they need to be lifted up and cared for.
Ethan's parents say Ethan was the comedian of the family and was a lover of country music and sports. What did Ethan like to do?
Anything. You name it, he played it, literally. I think we just watched a thing from the university, spike ball champion, volleyball champion. I mean, he just literally would play and do anything.
Ethan's girlfriend, Xana Kernodle, was one of the other victims, and they were in the same room in the house. Ethan's parents say they just saw him the weekend before the murders at the University of Idaho's Parents' Weekend and felt so proud and at ease.
As we pulled out of Moscow, we literally were like, we've done it. We've literally done it as parents. We've created 3 incredible humans that will go on.
But now the future looks much different, and Ethan's future gone. Now their focus is on supporting Ethan's 2 other siblings and keeping his light alive.
If everybody was like Ethan Chapin in this world, it would be a better place.
A loving sister.
Xana was such a light in my life and so many others. She was the person I could relate to the most, and she knew and understood me more than anyone.
A wise daughter.
She taught me a lot of stuff. She taught me how to be a dad.
Xana Kernodle's sister Jasmine remembers her as someone who could lift up a room.
She was so positive and lighthearted and understood the gift of life more than anyone I know.
Xana was originally from Avondale, Arizona. Her family later moved to Post Falls, Idaho. She played volleyball, soccer, and track at Post Falls High School. Xana went on to attend the University of Idaho. She pledged the Pi Beta Phi sorority and was majoring in marketing. According to an obituary in the Bonner County Daily Bee, Xana loved listening to electronic dance music and going on family trips with her sister and father.
She was my baby sister, but she was so much wiser and experienced so much more in life than I ever have. She never let an opportunity pass her by and enjoyed all the moments she had.
At the University of Idaho, Xana lived in a rental house with 5 other women. One of her roommates, Madison Mogen, was also her co-worker at the Mad Greek restaurant.
I know she loved living in her house in Moscow with her friends. I would hear so many stories about her and her roommates, and it made me so happy to know she had such great friendships.
She was dating Ethan Chapin, her first boyfriend.
They were always so happy, and the way she would talk and smile about him was something I've never seen her do before. She truly loved him so much, and I know he had so much love for her. They had something so special and everyone around them knew.
And Xana's loss has left those around her heartbroken.
Xana, you will not be forgotten. You have impacted so many lives and have given people so much love. I hope I can make you proud and try to leave an impact on this world and on people like you did.
Being comfy, cute pink things, smiling, dancing, and laughing. These are just some of the things Madison Mogen's friends and family remember that the 21-year-old loved.
It was just always making the best of every situation.
Maddie, as she was known, was from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Maddie was such an easygoing, loving child growing up.
Her family says she was inquisitive and curious. Big Steelers fans, her stepfather Scott Laramie shares a favorite memory from Maddie's time growing up.
Just watching the game with her, and every time the Steelers scored, I'd pick her up and I'd hold her high in the air and we'd celebrate together, and she'd always just laugh so hard at that.
Maddie grew up in northern Idaho with her best friend Kaylee Goncalves.
They were inseparable from the 6th grade on. The two of them were a force not to be reckoned with. They stuck together through everything.
Maddie loved to travel, especially with Kaylee and her family.
They were sisters. She was one of ours.
At the University of Idaho, Maddie was majoring in marketing. She worked at the Mad Greek restaurant and was using her marketing skills to run a social media campaign for the eatery. She was also a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. Her freshman year, Maddie met her boyfriend, Jake Schreiger. The couple dated for 2 years.
Maddie was my best friend. She was the first person I talked to every morning, and the last person I talked to before bed.
Jake says Maddie knew her worth. She was beautiful, inside and out. And if you needed a shoulder to cry on, that was Maddie too.
Maddie was the best at spreading love to all those that were close to her.
Kaylee Goncalves leaves a big void in her big family. Growing up in Rathdrum, Idaho, they describe her as the ultimate middle child.
She was always competitive. There was never a day that she didn't want to race her brother because she was just determined that girls were faster than boys, or that she didn't want to go bug her little sisters and make sure they knew that she was older.
Smack dab in the middle of 5 kids, Kaylee's mother, Christy, can't imagine what the family will be like without her.
The dynamics of her family will never be the same.
The 21-year-old was a senior at the University of Idaho. She was majoring in general studies. According to an obituary in the Coeur d'Alene Press, she was studying to become an elementary school teacher. Kaylee had a heart for adventure, was known for playing pranks on her family. She also loved her mini golden doodle Murphy, who her family says was her fur baby. Her sister Olivia says Kaylee was tough and fair, didn't hold back in love, fights, or life.
We'll miss that gift that she brought to us every single day, and she was a little ornery too, so we'll miss that as well.
Kaylee's father, Steve, smiles as he reflects on her love of country music and concerts. Her love of her best friend, Madison Mogen. She grew up alongside Madison. She died alongside her too.
They were beyond sisters, because sisters are you kind of forced to get along. These two didn't, they weren't forced. They were just like yin and yang.
The national spotlight may be on the suspect, but Steve wants to keep the focus on the beautiful lives lost. Moving forward, he's also working on forgiveness.
We're not gonna walk around with darkness in our heart for the rest of our lives and, have his name written there like a tattoo on our consciousness. So yeah, you have to forget. At least I feel you have to forgive. Otherwise, it's just a cancer inside you, and I'm not willing to live with that inside me.
There's still a long way to go until the Moscow Police Department can claim a conviction. Bryan Kohberger's case is working its way through the legal system. Meanwhile, for the families of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, they're just beginning the long process of healing. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Sebastian Robertson.